All right. GMGAG, everybody. Welcome to what's going to be another great DevNTell. So if you didn't know, DevNTell is a 30-minute window for members of the DAO to showcase something they're passionate about or have been working on. This can be an awesome project you've been working on, demonstrating unit testing best practices, automation goodies, smart contracts, how to structure a project, etc. Basically, if you got a passion for something, this is your opportunity to share with the community. And today I'm happy to introduce to you Gery, who will be showing us his project, Blocktorch. Gery, maybe you want to start out kind of explaining what brought you into Developer DAO and a bit of background about you.
Yes, thanks, Narb. Thanks for having me. Hi, everybody. I'm Gery. I'm one of the two co-founders of Blocktorch. I'm a happy Developer DAO member since ETH Amsterdam, actually. I had the chance to meet a couple of the DAO members back in April, which was pretty much exactly the time where my co-founder Amin and I started to build Blocktorch. And I was attending also then the lunch in Amsterdam from Developer DAO, and I just loved the vibes of the community, and I loved how helpful everyone was and how much time everyone took to give us feedback and like really help us on the journey of getting started with what we've been working on at Blocktorch. And that's basically how I got into the community, and that was the starting point, and been a very happy member since then. So maybe jumping into what we're building at Blocktorch, I'll quickly share my screen and going through a little presentation here. So what we're building at Blocktorch really is an observability platform. Can you see my screen, Narp?
Yes, yeah. I can. Yeah,
you can see it, yeah. So we are building an observability platform for the decentralized stack. What does that mean? So an observability platform, you might be familiar with, for example, DataDog or Splunk and New Relic, if you have used any of those in the Web2 world. And we are really looking to build a platform similar to like a DataDog, so an end-to-end observability platform, but Web3 native, and for all things that make the architecture of decentralized applications. And I will go into that in more detail in a second. About us as a company, so I said we're building an observability platform. We really do that because we want to enable engineering teams in Web3 to scale the decentralized applications to like a lot of users, like preferably millions of users, and we strongly believe, and we're convicted, as I guess a lot of you as well, that the space is growing quickly. I think builder activity is still at a really, really high level and growing, which is really motivating for us. And we have seen in the past in Web2 what a difference it can make if you have the right observability tooling in place, so that you can ensure that your application is actually giving your users the best user experience, and that you can actually focus on building product and don't have to kind of like try to firefight on a regular basis, and make sure that you know actually what's going on and manage reliability proactively. In terms of company, we started, as said, in April. We are based in Berlin, but very remote in terms of our setup now, but all in Europe right now. But we are actually also speaking to potential users all over the place, and we're also looking to speak to potential hires that can be basically based anywhere around the world. And we are a team of 4 right now. We have worked in software engineering and business development before in large tech companies, in FANG, as well as unicorns and startups. And we have all had our kind of like own way how we got into Web3. So all of us had some touch points with Web3 before already. And we formed first Amin and I, and then Tom and Arseni joined us over the last couple of months. Maybe a quick kind of like intro about what observability is in general, or why observability matters for the ones that might have not had any touch points in the past with observability. So it's really about having a comprehensive understanding of complex systems. And in general, observability is defined to basically understand the input or like the internal state of a system by analyzing its output. And with that, you can have smarter planning for code releases and application capacity. You have much faster problem solving and a shorter mean time to repair. So basically, the whole incident management is much faster for better reviews, for better uptime and performance. And at the end of the day, and I think that's the ultimate goal, to have happy customers and users, and of course, for the ones that are building real businesses, also more revenue. And we also know from a lot of decentralized applications where like top line, for example, is a direct connection to the transactions that are being done. So any failed transactions basically means not only like a user that might wonder what happened there, like slippage might have changed or some other factor, and that actually has a direct impact on the top line of the customers, but for of the revenues. But basically for the engineers, it really is all about understanding what's going on, and being able to take data-driven decisions, and not firefight about problems, but being able to solve them and ensuring that you have like incident management in place, that also allows you to ensure that certain problems do not occur in the future anymore once they have been resolved. How that kind of plays together, and maybe for that I quickly jump into the architecture of a decentralized application, and many of you probably are very familiar with it. But so today the complexity of decentralized applications is growing and growing, and you have the user that interacts with the browser, and of course all of us have used some kind of wallet before. So with the signer that actually interacts with the web server where the front end is hosted, that can be centralized or decentralized today. And then most teams are using some kind of node provider like Alchemy or QuickNode or Ketum. A lot of teams also still run their own nodes. And then these nodes actually connect with the chains where the smart contracts live and execute the transactions. And then you might also actually use some oracles as a decentralized data feed into your smart contracts. You might use some storage that can be decentralized like IPFS or a Swarm, or you can also use centralized storage just like a normal cloud server. And then a lot of applications also rely on some indexing and querying capabilities where they use the graph for subgraphs or Gold Sky, or for example, NFT port if it's NFT related. And what we really want to provide the engineers building these applications, maintaining them and running them into production, scaling them as well, is we think about that in terms of like a layer structure where we gather all the logs from these different components of your decentralized application. And we want to kind of like build a contextualized trace, so a distributed trace throughout the component where you can follow the request of the user flow throughout these components and ensure that basically you have all the information to understand whether there is any bottleneck, any anomaly occurring, not only in the smart contract, but actually also in all these other pieces of the architecture. And we then provide you on the one hand with a UI, so where you can actually consume it in a digestible way with a front end. But we also want to provide you APIs so that you can actually make use of it. But so the main thing we're also working on right now is building first basically the backbone, the data pipelines and the collectors, and then also giving you the observability tools as a UI so that you as an engineer or like an engineering team don't have to write your own scripts or anything like that, or just are able to right away get going and understand basically the observability data from your architecture. Where we are today, we have an alpha that we have hacked together during the summer where we went through Build Space Nights and Weekends. I can highly recommend that one, by the way. It was really cool. It's like a 6 weeks program which is all about getting out of localhost. And what we did is we basically built the first version of Blocktorch purely on smart contract data. So I'll show that to you in a second, but it's probably similar to what you can do with, for example, Tenderly, Monitor, or also other tools. It was simply the kind of like easiest way for us to get started because we just needed RPC node access and started to play around with the data that we could get from there. And we are now working on the beta platform, which we really plan to already provide an end-to-end platform with the first kind of like tracing capability from the UI to the smart contract layer. And depending on how far we get and how fast we are, we might already go deeper, actually also into, for example, data from oracles or like IPFS. But right now, the idea is to first focus on providing an observability platform to trace from the UI to the smart contract transaction. And maybe with that, I start in a rather untypical way. I first show you something that we built already for the beta version. We hacked it at ETH Bogota, which is called Dragon. And then afterwards, I'll showcase you the alpha version. I think what's also to be mentioned, I said we try and develop it, or I try and develop it now in April, and also with like the MVP we built, I'll show you in a second for the beta. We got a lot of feedback from developer DAO community members at ETH Bogota. So thanks also to all of you who participated and kind of like gave us feedback, which was super helpful. So jumping right into kind of like what I want to show you here, that feature called Dragon, which will be basically the start of the trace. So basically how we capture logs from the UI and from the wallets. Probably a lot of you are kind of familiar with getting such an error message while you're building your decentralized application, or when you kind of like have it in production and you update some piece of your code, where you get like and cannot estimate guess error, unhandled runtime error, and you're like, what is the reason for that? And very often it can have a multitude of different reasons. And what we already started to build is something where we show you the error streams and we actually understand where the error comes from. So this can be due to some kind of like way of initiating the contract call in the wrong way, or it could be that you're basically trying to, or a user tries to interact with your application in a way, or get a transaction through in a way that it is not meant to be. So we have done that with a game where you can play rock, paper, scissors, and we have set a certain kind of like rules how you're allowed to play the game. So you can't play against each other. You can't play against each other if you don't have the right kind of like matching number. You can't play against yourself. You have to fulfill certain criteria to actually be allowed to play. And whenever one of these criteria was not matched, we actually got that kind of error, which wasn't telling anything except for execution reverted. And we'll provide you an overview of the logs, of the log stream of these errors, and actually give you an idea of what happened there. And I'm not going into it now deeper, but we'll actually be able to give you additional information about who are the users affected by that, do they have something in common, and then we're actually going to trace it through. If there's not an error, we'll be able to give you a trace that plows back into the full kind of like trace up to the transaction being executed on chain. And with that, I'm going to show you our alpha version, which is all about smart contract data, and it will give you kind of like a basic understanding of the user journeys. So let me quickly switch my window here into the MVP. Cool. So you should see that now. So basically, this is the main overview that we have today in our home for Blocktorch, where you can add some smart contracts. In this case, I've added some smart contracts on Ethereum and Polygon for 1inch. You can add them simply by giving us the contract address and saying which chain it is, and then you can already edit it, and it will directly pop up here, and we'll start to fetch the data for that as well out of the box. So here I've already done that. You see here, for example, average gas consumption and transaction reverted success. You can zoom into it if you are kind of like interested in more detailed data. And you can zoom out of it, and you see here already some color coding that will make more sense in a second. Our idea moving forward, and I said this is just the alpha MVP, and we just got started with that, is that to have the dashboard as customizable as possible. So engineers should be able to see the kind of data that they care most about their application, without us kind of like telling you, okay, you should look into like the gas consumption, maybe something totally different is relevant for you, and you'll be able to kind of like define it as customizable and as individually as possible. So going deeper into kind of like what this color coding means and what SLOs are. So SLOs are service level objectives. And they're a concept that we have transferred from also Web2 software reliability engineering. And I've already set up two SLOs, which are both related to the revert rate. It's the only one that we have started to play around with in that alpha version. One is a revert rate SLO across chains. So for all the contracts or all the chains in that case that we have added, so Ethereum and Polygon. And one is purely on Polygon, as I wanted to show you kind of like how we are able to show a difference here. And we set a target of 98%. And in that case, we can see here that basically the target is not met because within 30-minute time windows, it's always a little below that. If we go purely into Polygon, we see the same picture here. And these SLOs can be simply be added through a query builder. We have the revert rate here. We could say, okay, it's only the Ethereum smart contract. You set your target here. We could also set it down to like 90%, for example. You can set a warning where you want to get it at 91%. You can give it a description. and then basically you save it and you store it. We'll just add another one here. And that leads to us monitoring these kind of service level objectives for you all the time. And the reward rate is only one idea that we started to play around. If you have any feedback or any idea, kind of metrics that you would love to actually track, would love to get your feedback. We are right now gathering and speaking to a lot of engineers and gathering ideas what kind of facets we should actually add. And we're working on it with the beta release to give as much flexibility to engineers as possible. And here we just try to play around with it to kind of like give it an idea and test it. If one of them is breached, you can also get a notification that would look like that in your emails. We are also working on some integration with Slack and even wallets. So you would just get a notification your SLO has been breached, when exactly, what was the cause of that, and then you're able to either refine it, or you can also say, okay, you actually don't want to get these alerts, and then you wouldn't get it anymore. So one thing that we really heard by many builders in the space is that they kind of have alert fatigue with a lot of tools. And we want to ensure that you only get the alerts or notifications that really matter to you, and you're really taking the ones seriously that you get. And so coming to the final piece, so as said, you're setting these SLOs, you're setting your thresholds, you have your contracts here. You might have, as we go into the beta version, it will look probably very differently, but you will not only see your contracts, but also, for example, other pieces like the node providers you're using, or if you're running your own node, or certain UI pieces and libraries that you might be using, certain integrations you might be using, where you can all visualize them in like a visual way where you see, is there anything you need to dig into? And so it can be green or red, which plows back into whether it breaches an SLO or not. And if we say, for example, okay, here all three of them are actually breaching an SLO, but you want to look deeper into that Polygon contract, you can just click into it, and we actually have built a log manager, which should give the better experience of a block explorer tailored to the needs of engineers. And here it's still in the making, and again, this is an MVP. So here you can see, for example, that you can't see the full data, but we powered it with Elasticsearch. So you can actually look for things like approval for all, and then you would see all transactions that are related to exactly the signature of the transaction. Or you can, for example, look for one specific contract or a couple of contracts cross-chain. So Ethereum and Polygon. In that case, we started with Ethereum. Polygon, the beta version, has the plan to be fully EVM compatible, so more than just Ethereum and Polygon. And then the idea that we have currently, and like also would love to get some feedback there, is that if you have a SLO that is being breached and you have a contract or another component that you know basically is affected by that breach, you click on the contract and you directly get led to the logs that purely are around the time where the breach happened. So we want to minimize the time that it takes for you to figure out, okay, some anomaly happened or some breach of your SLO, to what was the root cause of that. And so basically that's it. That's what we have built. That's what I wanted to show you. That's where I would love to get some feedback from you on. It was, as I said, an alpha MVP. We're at the very beginning, and we're looking also for getting more feedback as we're building the beta version to ensure we're actually building something that you guys love and that really makes your life as engineers building decentralized applications easier. And with that, I would go to questions if there are any. Otherwise, happy to wrap it up.
Yeah, Gary, this is fantastic, man. Having this kind of reconciliation option for Web3 development is a godsend, because we all know, or if you ever had to go on on-call rotation, you want to be able to find out what's wrong really quick and resolve as quick as possible. So having a tool like this is really awesome. Couple questions for you. Is are there is there any limits in terms of the logs that you retain? Like, is there, or do you have plans to introduce a log retention mechanism?
Yes, so basically what we are building right now, and so we are planning to also release it for free, is like with a 7-day trailing history,
Mm-hmm.
also in terms of logs. And we are right now thinking about how we kind of like ensure that you can also have some data rehydration possibilities. And probably we're going to introduce some paid tiers, like first one for like smaller teams and then for enterprises, where we want to enable basically full customizable history on the logs as well, or on all the data, not just the logs. So as I said, we're also going to build some contextual traces out of it.
Yeah.
And if you're familiar with like DataDog, we have certain kind of like flame charts on these traces.
Yeah.
So depending on what your needs are, we want to give it for free for like 7 days for sure, to get people started, and for like smaller indie needs that should be fine. And exactly, we're probably gonna introduce a paid tier for longer data needs.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, makes total sense. And do you have plans for front end, being able to connect a front end apps like logs, to be able to have those logs trickle into Blocktorch, vis-a-vis
Yes,
like a
exactly.
yeah, like a user agent?
So
Yeah.
basically, yeah, so basically, we have already started to develop an SDK. It's like 3 lines of code. It's pretty unbaked yet. So you can check it, or I can also share a link later from our submission at ETH Bogota for the hackathon. So we won 2 prizes with that from Polygon and Coinbase Cloud. And that's an SDK, and with that we can capture these logs.
Excellent. I don't want to hog all the questions. So any questions from the crowd? All right. If not, I have a couple more. Um, could you speak on what your plans are for logging events and errors from the decentralized storage, or is it too early to kind of imagine that?
Yeah, so it's a little early still on that. But so basically, you can use something like decentralized storage like IPFS not only for storage but also for hosting. So this might be a difference already.
Mm-hmm.
So we're trying to look into that. But at the end of the day, I think we're gonna try to maybe have something like an agent that can sit next to nodes of, for example, IPFS. And with that, we should probably be able to fetch the data similar to like a subgraph. Like you can build with the graph, you can build a subgraph on IPFS already.
Yeah.
And we're thinking about something that we call dynamic subgraphs for nodes as well as like also IPFS nodes. So we are kind of like experimenting with that idea, but it's a little too early for that right now. So it's probably not going to be part of the beta release. But our end goal, our mission is really to have all the different components that the architecture of an application is built out of in one source of truth for the engineering team.
Excellent. Excellent. And do you also have any plans for creating reports, or further dashboards that can output reports based on the logs?
Totally. So I think the first quick hack is gonna be that we might kind of like allow you to create some manual reports really quickly, but then it should be automated incident reporting.
Yep.
Not only because, so of course our first target group are the engineers, and then also the wider engineering team, and then of course you will be able to also share reports with the leadership, and maybe other teams cross-functionally, depending on who is kind of like involved in it or impacted by that as well. And we really like the kind of like flow in Datadog where if an incident happens, you kind of like have a link and you just share the link in your Slack channel, and that leads you directly to all the event logs and all the important information of exactly that incident. And that's pretty much what we're thinking of doing.
Love it. Yeah, that'll be awesome. I guess we have a couple more minutes left. Any questions from the crowd? Going once, going twice. Sold. Well, all right. Thank you so much, Gery, for coming on and showing us the progress of the app. I guess the final question for me is how can people follow Blocktorch's development and reach out to you if they have questions or want to help out?
Totally. So first of all, follow us on Twitter. We also have a Discord server, which is fairly speaking pretty inactive today, but we are thinking about getting more activity there once the beta release comes near. And then feel free to just like ping me and directly connect with me as well over DMs. And then you can also just try out the alpha version if you head over to Blocktorch.xyz and give it a try. And then if you decide to sign up with your email, you might get you will also get like updates. You can also sign up with your wallet. There we don't have an update flow yet. We have some app queues in the alpha version, so you might get some updates there. But Twitter probably is the best channel as we are quite active there, and also try to build it in public by sharing some of our progress there. And then we are also actually extending a team, so feel free to reach out if it looks like something you're interested in participating and contributing. Definitely, we're hiring various roles. We're just closing a financing round that gives us more power to grow the team.
Dope. Love to hear it. Yeah, many applications, and yeah, looking forward to seeing the progress here. So again, thank you very much for coming on. Was a pleasure having you on.
Thanks as well. Thanks,
Yeah,
Rob.
yeah, no problem. All right, gang. And with that, I want to wish everybody a very happy Friday or weekend, wherever you may be. And please stay tuned for the POAP drop that will be in the developer voice chat message and the general chat as well. And we will catch you here next week, where yours truly will be demonstrating a cool new way to interact with decentralized storage. So catch you here next week. All the best, gang.